are some psychological life hacks you can do to give you an advantage in situations? Story 1. When a group of people laugh, people will instinctively look at the person they feel closest to in that group. Read. Want to know who wants to bone who? Look at who they look at when everyone laughs. Story 2. If you get yourself to be really happy and excited to see other people, they will react the same to you. It doesn't always happen the first time, but it will definitely happen next time. Story 3. I learned this on here a few years ago. For anyone in customer service or works for many different situations, but CS is a big one, put a mirror behind you at the counter. This way, angry customers who approach you will have to see themselves in the mirror behind you, and the chances of them behaving irrationally lowers significantly. No one wants to see themselves act like a dickhead. Story 4. Pay attention to people's feet. If you approach two people in the middle of a conversation and they only turn their torsos and not their feet, they don't want you to join in the conversation. Similarly, if you are in a conversation with a coworker who you think is paying attention to you and their torso is turned towards you but their feet are facing in another direction, they want the conversation to end. You should check out Carol Kinsey Goman's research on these types of things in the workplace. Story 5. When you first meet people, try to notice their eye color while also smiling at them. It might be because you look for a second or two longer, but all I can tell you is that people really respond to it. Story 6. The physical effects of stress. Increased breathing rate, heart rate EC, mirror identically the physical effects of courage. So when you're feeling stress from any situation, immediately reframe it. Your body is getting ready to do courage. It's not feeling stress. Story 7. For interviews, I recommend altering your psychological state beforehand. Tell yourself, I've known these people all my life. We're old friends catching up. I can't wait to see them. Visualize the experience, shaking hands, making eye contact, having conversation. What things can you not to wait to tell them? Hold an open pose. Stand with your legs apart, hands on your hips, and shoulders back while doing this, and smile. This may sound cliché, but you are in charge of your own psychological state, and the power of suggestion is strong. Story 8. After a person breaks up with someone, they are at their most vulnerable state for manipulation because of the flood of emotions. This could be used for the good or evil purposes. Story 9. False attribution of arousal. When you take somebody out on a first date, take them somewhere exciting that will get their heart beating. E.g., roller coaster or horror film. This gets their adrenaline up. It makes them think they enjoy spending time with you rather than the activity. Story 10. In sales, though I guess it could be applied in other ways, once you make the sales pitch, don't say anything else. My boss at an old job was training me and just giving me pointers. I was working at a gym trying to sell memberships. He told me that once I got all the small talk out of the way and presented the prices, that the first person to talk will lose. It didn't seem like a big deal, but it actually worked. Often there were long periods of awkward silence as the person tried to come up with some excuse, but usually they bought. It was quite impressive, actually. Story 11. People will remember not what you said, but how you made them feel. Also, most people like talking about themselves, so ask lots of questions about them. Edit. There's been some really good advice in this thread that refines ask about them quite a bit. That would be good to incorporate. Stuff like, get them talking on a general topic, movies, music. Ask them what movies, music, whatever it was they like. Engage them on that, go from there, offer bits of information about yourself, then bounce it back to them, i.e., the snowboarding suggestion elsewhere in this thread. That was a really good one. Watch out for social cues that it's the person off. They might be one of the people who really don't like talking about themselves. And if you notice those cues, stop. Your goal is to make them feel good via engaging them on their most cherished subjects, i.e., themselves and the things they like the most. Also, this technique is really good for various situations that might otherwise be awkward. For example, when you are trying to draw out a reserved person, how do you do that? Show an interest in them, a genuine one ideally, and go from there. Someone you want to know better in that special boy-girl way? Asking about them is often a really good approach. Trying to get someone to like you in a situation with a power differential, i.e., in a workplace setting or a job interview. Get them talking, ideally about something work-related that makes them feel competent. They will remember how good they felt in your presence, and that will color their perception of you. You're not aiming to be the audience to a monologue. You're trying to find ways in which you can connect with that other person. The ultimate goal is to connect. Story 12. When I worked in retail, I had a tendency to get real curt with rude customers. When I realized I was just taking the bait, I decided to be super nice even when they would get openly hostile. Some of them would get even crazier, and they looked like tools. Story 13. If you're in a group meeting and you suspect that someone in there might come after you about something, sit right next to them. They were hoping that the group would provide some sort of herd defense, but if you're right next to them, it can't be anything other than personal. This tends to make them back off, or at least substantially temper what they say. Source: had a job with a huge target painted on my back for years. Story 14. I remember the last time this thread showed up, someone posted that if you ask someone to do you a small favor, cognitive dissonance will make them believe that because they did that favor, they therefore must like you. After all, why would they help someone they disliked? I don't have a source, unfortunately, but I believe the original comment did if anyone can find the previous thread. Story 15. You are in control of your emotions and thoughts. Try replacing some immediate responses. Tell yourself you're happy about something or you're excited. Eventually, your brain will end up believing it. That's the same for being down, and that's why you should never try to diagnose yourself. Saying you're depressed or have social anxiety would end up with you being more anxious and more depressed. You won't notice it at first, but over a few months it will have a pretty noticeable effect on your personality. Edit. I meant feeling depressed, not being depressed. Also, it depends on the scenario, as a lot of things are out of our control. Story 16. The best one I ever heard was, apparently, if you have a warm hand when you shake somebody's hand, you immediately become a more desirable person to get along with. Story 17. You don't have to, you get to. Edit regarding cancer. I have to have chemo. I get to have chemo. Which one would you rather say? Have to is a great way to remove agency and make yourself a victim of your own life. I'm not saying that cancer is great or fun, or that this trick will magically make your suffering go away, but it will reframe it so that you are an agent in your own life and adds a dollop of gratitude. Got cancer? You can be a monstrous cancer patient or an inspiration. You can give the up or you can go down fighting. I've watched both, and the quality of one is far better than the other. Story 18. Stand up straight, no slouching, hands out of pockets, and head held up high. It's not just a cliche. You literally feel better, and people around you feel more confident in you. Not always a must, but try to dress well for important occasions, including interviews. If you look good, you feel good. And if you feel good, you'll do good. In a negotiation setting, always start by anchoring, meaning start on a more radical extreme end of what you expect to get. That way, you and the other side can work to that result, rather than you locking yourself out of it. Avoid saying, I think, and I believe, unless absolutely necessary. These are phrases that do not evoke confidence, and will literally do you no good. When playing a game of cards with casual players, mutter to yourself the exact opposite of what you want to happen. So if you want your opponent to fold, then mutter, please don't fold, please don't fold. An overwhelming amount of times, the opponent will fall for the bait. When feeling anxious, clean up your house apartment. You will feel happier and more accomplished than before. From an academic standpoint, this is mostly just armchair psychology. But from a real-world standpoint, these have all worked very well in my personal and professional lives. Story 19. Promise yourself you'll never talk about other people. Even when the people around you are talking, even when you agree with what they're saying, you don't have to make a big deal of it. Just don't partake in it. Once people get the idea you're not into saying mean about other people behind their backs, the amount of they talk around you will decrease. It isn't fun to talk unless everybody's talking. Your decision to stop talking and their eventual reaction to you not reciprocating the talking will positively affect both of you, as well as your relationship. I don't know, for me, since I made this change in how I interact with people, the amount and quality of my friendships has grown. People will trust you more if they haven't listened to you gossip about other people. You will be seen as a more positive person than other friends who do talk. The gap gossiping used to fill will be replaced with way more interesting and/or intimate conversation too. IDK, just stop talking and be kind. Edit. To whoever gave me gold, thank you so much. I love you. Story 20. Refer to people you've just met by their name. People loving being referred to by their name, and it will establish a sense of trust and friendship right away. Say your friend introduced you to Peter. After 5 minutes, he decides to leave. Don't just say, bye, but instead say, bye, Peter. Story 21. When you're studying, learning something new, teach a friend how about it. Let them ask questions. If you're able to teach something well, you understand it. Story 22. Make it a practice to get rid of filler words and phrases such as like, you know, etc. Instead, use short pauses to gather your thoughts before speaking, though avoid Shatner-style pauses. Using filler words keys whoever you're talking to that you are thinking about what you're saying. Leaving them out makes these thinking spots less noticeable, since you aren't essentially announcing to the world that you are thinking, and makes you seem more sure of yourself. Story 23. I work with mentally disabled children and have found it highly beneficial to describe their capacities in such a way that I indirectly describe their limitations, as opposed to the reverse. In real-life terms, avoid negative words when pitching something unfavorable to an audience that you want to receive it well. If you can do it in writing, all the better, because you get to pick out your words carefully. Also focus the manner by which you intend to fix things, rather than the problems. Johnny can't even speak in phrases and only turns his head to you when you say his name, but doesn't make eye contact. He won't sit in a chair for more than a minute unless you repeatedly tell him to. Nope. Try again. Johnny uses words to communicate, so the next step is to strengthen his skills up to the level of 2-word phrases. He responds to his name by turning, so we're going to work on his ability to maintain eye contact. Johnny is able to remain seated for longer than 1 minute if given repeated prompting. Which would you rather hear about your kid? This also applies to other types of work. Use it to present anything negative. Works magnificently. Story 24. Late to the party boot? If you're playing beer pong and your opponent is playing like he sold his soul to the devil, all you have to do is ask what he is doing to with his opposite throwing hand. Damn bro, you're playing hella good. What are you doing with your left hand when you shoot? This will make him conscious of his left hand and he will start messing up almost every time. Drink well, my friends. Story 25. This has been posted before, but if you want to stare at someone unashamedly, look directly past them and wait for them to try and meet your eyes. When they fail to do that, they'll look around, usually nervously for a second, and won't look at you again for some time. This is your chance to straight up stare at this person for at least 45 seconds. Story 26. I cannot take credit for this. I remember reading this from another AskReddit post. The key to confidence is walking into a room and assuming everyone already likes you. Edit.grammar. Story 27. If you're into psychological hacks, then you must read Get Anyone to Do Anything, also on iTunes audiobooks. It's a fascinating, easy-to-understand book written by a psychologist. The hacks are divided up into chapters. How to catch someone out on a lie, for example. Brilliant technique. I gave this to an old manager I used to work with. He was having problems with a board member that hated him and wouldn't agree with any of his suggestions regardless of how good they were, after applying techniques in the book that all changed. I also used it to get a date with a woman who I considered way out of my league. It worked, I'm ashamed to say. Story 28. If you really want something from someone, frame it as an offer rather than a request. When Teddy Roosevelt was running for president, his campaign printed out 3 million leaflets with a picture of Teddy and a copy of a campaign speech. The campaign then realized that they didn't have the rights to the photo. Instead of explaining the situation to the photographer, which would have given him leverage to ask for a lot of money, the campaign made an offer that they would use the picture, giving the photographer lots of publicity if the studio paid them $250. The studio paid the money. Story 29. Power posing. Watch this awesome TED Talk about power posing and the impact it will have on your life. Story 30. People are extraordinarily aware of their sense of touch. If someone, a member of the opposite, accidentally rests their knee on yours, let's say, they know it's there. Story 31. A Navy lifer. I worked with taught me the see one, do one, teach one method. The last step is the most vital step for your comprehension. If you are taught a new task at work, most people learn to do the task and then perform the task. If you find another employee to teach what you just learned, you will comprehend the concept better and retain the info for much longer. Whenever I train a new associate at work, I ask them to go show another coworker how to do the task they just learned. Magic. Story 32. Here's a comment I made from a post about this a long time ago. It's my time to shine. Psychological researcher here, and I have a few tips to help you out in some situations. Romance. Look up the false attribution of arousal. Basically, if you want to make someone like you, get their heart rate going. Take them on a date to see a scary movie and then go out for coffee. This puts their body in an aroused, increased blood flow, not sexual, state. Their mind then falsely attributes that physiological effect to being with you, making them think they like you. Hopefully they actually do, but this gets the ball rolling. Attractiveness. Wearing red. For women, the color red makes them exponentially more attractive. Research has shown that men will go to great lengths to do things for a woman in red that they would not do otherwise, like give her money or even carry her across the street. Interviewing. Body mirroring. So something that we do that we don't realize is mirror the body language of people that we like our friends. If they sit cross-legged, we will. If they touch their face, we will. This goes back to the subconscious will to be more like the people that we respect. You can kind of force this, though, say in an interview. Put a conscious effort into mirroring the body posture of your interviewer, but don't be obvious about it. Be nice and subtle. This will kind of trick their mind into thinking that they like you. After all, you are doing similar things with your body, why not? Get them to talk about themselves. People are selfish and they love talking about what they do. Ask your interviewer as many questions about what they do for work and really listen. They will walk away from the interview in a good mood because they got to talk about themselves, and they will then think that the interview went well. If you are able, schedule the interview as early as possible. There's a ton of cognitive psychology research about the primacy effect, which essentially states that items are more memorable if they are presented earlier. So if you're going into a grad school interview where the person will literally be interviewing all day, you will be more memorable if you go first. If you are unable to be first, go last. Similarly, there is research about the recency effect, which states that items are also memorable if they are presented last, though the primacy effect is more reliable. Just try not to be stuck in the middle. Debate. Don't give your stance first, give your argument. In some self-interest research that I did myself in my undergrad, I found that your persuasiveness is fragile and dependent on your social identity. For example, if you came out and say, "I'm an atheist and this is what I believe," you are already seen as less persuasive and more biased because people already know why you are arguing what you're arguing. You have something to gain by convincing people you're an atheist. What you should do is not say you're an atheist at all. Say, "This is what I believe." Because people don't have an assumption already in their mind, they will be more likely to view you as less biased. Bonus points if you're on the opposite side. For example, a conservative arguing for gay rights is going to be viewed as very persuasive and not biased at all, because they literally have nothing to gain from holding that viewpoint, while a homosexual arguing for gay rights does have something to gain, and thus is seen as more biased. Additional oddities. Reminding people of their death will make them more likely to follow a charismatic leader. You have a much higher chance of success in a relationship if your parents and your friends like your romantic partner. The placebo effect is actually more powerful than some medications. One study found that cancer patients given a placebo to treat their cancer had a 12% increase in remission rates. A UCLA study found that students worked better in a partner task with an openly homosexual student as opposed to an ambiguously homosexual. Seems gay, but not sure. This was true for both cognitive tasks, math, and motor tasks. There's a ton more fascinating social psychological research out there. TLDR psychology is boss. Story 33. Always give your kid a choice that makes them think they are in control. For instance, when I want him to put his shoes on, I will say, "Do you want to put your Star Wars shoes on or your shark shoes on?" Story 34. When you find yourself in a situation where you're forced to do a job you don't care about, instead of thinking of the job as something you're doing while you wait for your one true passion, just forget about what it means to you and think instead about doing it well. Making sandwiches to pay the bills? Make really good sandwiches and be friendly. Doing scut work for your coworkers since you're the lowest on the totem pole? Do really good scut work. Sweeping floors? Make your floors the cleanest. If you get your ego out of the way, you'll realize that there's a lot of joy to be found in doing anything well, with passion, integrity, and care for the people who you're serving. And the people around you will recognize you as a passionate, serious, caring person, even if what you're doing isn't what you're truly passionate about. Perhaps more importantly, it will create the habit of excellence. You don't develop that habit by slacking your whole life and then suddenly being awesome once you reach an imaginary plateau. Story 35. You know how a joke ceases to be funny when you have to repeat it? Well, use that to your benefit. If that in the group is making jokes at your expense, act like you can't hear him and ask him to repeat it like 3 times. By the time he says it a third or fourth time, no one's laughing. Story 36. I always try to figure out everyone's motivations for what they are doing. Are they trying to take advantage or are they genuinely trying to help someone? In business situations, who stands to profit? Always follow the motivations and always know who profits. By knowing this, you can protect yourself from being taken advantage of. If you find Simone being altruistic, you know who to befriend. Story 37. If you are angry at the person in front of you driving like a grandmother, pretend it is your grandmother. It will significantly reduce your road rage. Story 38. This sounds a bit silly, but if you're asking for a favor, always use the word because. I remember reading about a study done at a university where they used every imaginable combination of words to ask if they could cut in line for the photocopier. And they found that using the word because short-circuited people's brains into believing that there's a reason for it, even if they said something stupid like, "Could I please cut in line? Because I need to make some copies." Story 39. For taking tests, always have a water bottle with you and chew mint-flavored gum or have mints on you. An hour of sleep before midnight is the equivalent of 2 hours after midnight with serotonin levels. So try to sleep early and wake early, and you'll feel more rested. You're more likely to retain knowledge by spacing out study sessions and getting 8 hours of sleep the night before than cramming and getting less sleep. The things you learn from having a biopsychology degree. Story 40. If you have someone in your life between 2 to 7, based on their brain development, they don't understand conservation. So if you have 2 crackers and they have 1, for example, break theirs in half and they will think it is equal. Story 41. If you want to build rapport or gain someone's trust quickly, match their body posture and position. If someone is sitting with her legs crossed, cross your legs. If they're leaning away from you, mean away from them. If they're leaning towards you, lean towards them. Mirroring and matching body position is a subconscious way to tell if someone trusts you or is comfortable with you. If you're sitting with your arms crossed and you notice someone else is sitting with her arms crossed, that is a good indicator that you are successfully building rapport with that person. You can use this in any situation where you need to gain somebody's trust quickly. Matching somebody else's body posture will psychologically signal to them that they can be comfortable around you. This can benefit you in any job situation or any interviewing situation, or any situation where you need to gain a person's trust quickly. Did I mention it builds trust quickly? Edit. Fixed talk-to-text errors. Story 42. If you and a coworker are slacking off just talking to each other and your supervisor comes up and starts saying, "What the are you doing?" or blaming your group for something, just look at one of your coworkers and don't make eye contact with your boss. Your coworker will likely be looking at your boss, and when your boss sees you looking at the coworker, the anger will be directed at them and not you. It works almost every time. A guy I worked with used to be the laziest and always started screwing around but never got in trouble. He told me his secret, and I have used it successfully ever since. Story 43. Your action affect your attitudes more than your attitudes affect your actions. This goes for moral, ethic stuff, but also mood. If you're feeling down, doing what you would have done if you were happy will make you more happy, not including depression. As my former teacher said, you can jump and dance in joy, but you can also jump and dance yourself joyful. Story 44. Be really nice and courteous to gardeners, cleaners, garbage men, etc. Be sincere about it. Not only do you surround yourself with people who are happier than they'd otherwise be, you generally always get better service. Story 45. If you forget someone's name in a social gathering, introduce them to someone you know. They will automatically say their name every time, and you can capture it. I.e., you say to unknown named person, "This is my friend, Poop Face." To which unknown named person responds, "Hello, poop face. I'm Scott. Nice to meet you." Story 46. Not sure if this is what you want, but I've found that if you get embarrassed, don't react as if you were embarrassed. Just tank through it and laugh it off if someone brings it up later. Get caught staring at a girl's breasts? Make intense eye contact for a good second, then resume staring at her. Never yield. Story 47. If you feel uncomfortable in a social situation, try making someone else feel comfortable. Forget about yourself and focus on them. You'll both be glad that you did. Most of the things I use have been said already, but there is something that I can't really describe that I use. Do you remember that feeling you used to get as a kid when you were really genuinely excited about something and you just had a compulsion to jump around and tense your stomach and kind of make a high-pitched "ee" sound while your face was locked in a broad smile? It's an intense feeling that swells in your stomach. If ever you're really intensely nervous or anxious and feeling sick about something you're about to do, like public speaking or even about to talk to a girl you like, turn your fear into that feeling. Tense your stomach or legs. Feel your head swell and have that urge to jump around and scream with joy, but don't actually do it. Keep a calm, pleasant head while this feeling is bubbling under the surface. People can sense this inner enthusiasm and will find it captivating and infectious. Story 48. Plan something every Wednesday that you can look forward to. Everyone looks forward to the weekend, but that always seems like a long ways away when you are getting up Monday. If you plan something small to do, like treating yourself to some frozen yogurt or setting up a movie date, you will look forward to that in the beginning of the week. Then, by the time it's over, half the week has gone by, and you are that much closer to the weekend. Story 49. Try and use people's names throughout conversation as an oral cue to keep them engaged in the conversation. It also helps you remember their name if you're meeting them for the first time. Instead of yelling at someone during a fight, drop your voice to a whisper. It forces the other person to listen more closely. Both of these hacks are useful on unruly children and significant others. Story 50. At work. I used to depend on the input of one of my team members. He was really argumentative and mostly a massive fucking, but unfortunately he was absolutely amazing at what he did. So we all just put up with it. He took every opportunity to undermine me and make him look better than me, etc., etc. Anyway, I used to manipulate him really well with a mate. I'm totally stuck here. What do you think's the best way to do it? And straight off the bat, he'd just tell me the best thing to do. Or if I was torn between two ideas and I knew he wouldn't pick either, just to be I'd tell him we've got two choices, but before I give him a chance to shoot them down, I'd then ask him which he thought would work best for him. Worked every time, until he showed his to a woman and we sacked him. Story 51. The universe was formed 14 billion years ago. The planet Earth, 4.5 billion years old. Life first arose 3.5 billion years ago. At the time of your birth, there were 5.5 billion people alive on Earth. The chance that your parents met is infinitesimally small. The chance of you yourself being born, even smaller. I recite this to myself every time I feel either too important or not important enough. My existence is the result of an immeasurably large series of forces, events, and random chances that have culminated in a singularly unique being. Story 52. Primacy and recency. People most remember the first and last things to occur, and barely the middle. When scheduling an interview, ask what times the employer is interviewing and try to be first or last. Story 53. In college, whenever I had an exam, I would always study in the classroom the class was in. I would write all my notes on the whiteboard and memorize them on the board. Then, whenever the test came, if I got stuck, I'd be able to look at the board and imagine what I wrote on it. Story 54. This is one of my favorite topics. A few scattered ones that come to mind, in no particular order. 1. If you have to give a speech or otherwise get comfortable with a location, go to the venue early and shout, scream, yodel from the stage, stomp around loudly, act like you fucking built the place. The extra sense of familiarity and ownership will still be there when the pressure's on. Body language author Tanya Riemann has a lot of good tidbits like this one. 2. You can get most people to cooperate with requests more easily by telling them, you can X, instead of, you must, saw, should, bah, need to, have to X, or go do X. It's called permissive suggestion, and you can probably try it out in the next 10 minutes no matter where you are. 3. A key stage in escalating physical intimacy, that most people skip, is direct belly-to-belly contact. It's a natural, still-clothed bridge between clothes on and clothes off that increases intimacy. 4. Also keep their and your feet warm. Literal cold feet will make a person substantially less likely to become aroused and make women 30% to less likely to reach. 5. When you have to urinate, or when you think there is money on the line depending on each decision you make, you become instantly more rational. Some people, like competitive gamers, will actually overdrink water so that they have a constant mild need to throughout a tournament. Just don't let it get to where you're desperate, because then you'll become so rational that, hey, this game. 6. People are significantly more likely to take your word or accept your argument if you use the word because, even if the argument doesn't make that much sense, because generally they're in love with you anyway, so whatever. 7. Imagining doing exercise in detail actually makes you stronger. Last I saw, the mechanism for this was not confirmed, but based on my experience in hypnosis, I suspect it's a result of practicing the relevant nervous system communication as well as actual micro-level muscle activity that occurs as a result of imagination or memory. 8. If you put the healthy snacks in a school at the kids' eye level, more of them will choose healthy snacks over chips and popcorn. People tend to do what comes first or easiest. You can check out the book Nudge if you want more on this principle. 9. If you can't find anything in common with someone but want to build rapport, ask what it is that they love about what they love. Those feelings are where you'll find common ground. Maybe watching soccer doesn't interest you, but you can connect with them over the appreciation of skill and the camaraderie they get from it, because that's what you love about poker. 10. A big picture one. The following quote is attributed to family systems therapist Virginia Sater. What do you think is the strongest instinct in human beings? The student replies, survival. Nope. The strongest instinct in human beings is to make things familiar. 11. There are obviously cases where this doesn't apply, but I've often said that the best generic advice you can give anyone at almost any time and wind up helping their emotional well-being is to simply nudge them to start doing some kind of new, especially social activity, on a regular basis. There's a reason why the take a pottery class cliché exists. When your current routine involves any kind of boredom, malaise, or lack, you might as well shake up the routine and get some new inputs into the system. Hope this is useful to some of you. I really had to stop myself from writing even more. Edit. One more, just because it's so good. When you're under any kind of stress, the hormones released in your body are the same as when you experience a fight-or-flight response. Literally, acute stress is your body reacting as though you might die, and chronic stress is when they build up over time. Those hormones are meant to juice you up for self-defense or escape, so you can burn them away with any strenuous physical activity. This will prevent individual stressors from cascading into a lifestyle of feeling anxious, irritable, or overburdened. Story 55. Only just opened this link and the first thing I see is, enough with the ass pennies. This should be good. Story 56. Mom taught me that if you repeat whatever someone says as a question, it's belittling and makes them feel stupid. It makes you look bitchy though if you do it too much. Hi, Mom. Story 57. Familiarity breeds contempt. Don't always be available to people. Have a good time whenever you're with them and keep things on a positive note, but don't always be available to them. They will miss you when you're gone. Every time they see you, they'll be happy. It also keeps you out of a lot of drama. People value things that are rare. Have several groups of friends that you rotate through. You'll always be well-liked. Of course, don't do this if you're in a relationship or something. Story 58. If you yawn when you're with someone, if they're truly paying attention to you, they'll yawn as well. When I first read this, I walked up to my mom and sister without saying a word and just yawned. My sister copied, Mom just stared. Felt the love then. Story 59. Dear Man, is the best algorithm for negotiating interpersonal conflicts and getting what you need. Describe the facts. I noticed that you have been taking my food from the company fridge. Explain how the facts make you feel. And it really makes me upset and hurt. Ask your demands. Please stop taking my food. Reinforce good behavior. Thank you for agreeing to stop taking my food. I really appreciate your consideration. Be mindful. Yada yada. Combine this with broken record. Technique. If they say, but I was hungry, or why were you invading my privacy, or something else off topic, return to the top and ignore what they are saying. DX or interruption. Dear. This is an algorithm that is taught in dialectical behavioral therapy, and people pay out the wazoo to learn it, so use it. Story 60. When I approach a crowd that has no intention of making any accommodation for me, I simply stop moving and stand still. 3 wide on a sidewalk? Bam, I'm a statue now. Now, the social agreement is that I am no longer required to make any sort of accommodating actions. No matter how many people or how stubborn the opposing crowd is, they would be colossal dicks for bumping into me. I have placed the onus for moving past each other safely solely on them. Story 61. This will undoubtedly be buried. But if you deem yourself remotely intellectually superior to you peers, co-workers, etc., allowing yourself to be perceived as less intelligent is an advantage. And if you're on the other side of the coin and posed a question you can't answer, just reciprocate it into another question. I've worked with the smartest and dumbest, and both tend to succeed with this advice when applied appropriately.